Okay, I think we can get started. Swabira, thanks so much for rescheduling and being willing to chat with us. I'm really excited to learn about what the Kenya Red Cross Society has been doing with drones. I know you said it's come a long way since the last time you spoke with us. So over to you.
Sure thing. It's definitely been, I think I was trying to remember the last time I presented must have been around 2021. So much has been happening since then, so many changes, but thank you for having me, Dan, and for the rest of the team. My name is Swabira Abdul Razak. I'm part of the innovations team here at Kenya Red Cross. We are under ICHA, which is the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs. So we sit under ICHA, which is the Research and the Knowledge Hub. So that's where the drone team has been hosted for the last 5 years. So a quick summary of what I'm about to get in today. I'll take you through a quick recap from 2019 to 2025, just highlights here and there. As I did present some of what we've done before. Then we're going to our milestones, things, what we'd like to call our big wins here at Kenya Red Cross. Also just looking forward in terms of what we project, what we would like to get into, what our vision is for the year in the next 3 years. Now that we also offer service packages under ICHA, so I'll get a bit into that, and then maybe we can finish off with a quick Q&A, if any. So yeah, just quickly taking you guys through the recap. What you're seeing here is a list of missions for mapping and documentation missions and search and rescue missions. They're quite a bit, but I've done my best to show here in terms of our skills and expertise. So we did manage to map out the Dadaab E42 camp like 3-4 years ago. That was a big learning for us. We're using smaller drones then, so a lot of learnings from that mission. Our first ever mission, trying to understand mapping. When we got our first mapping drone is what you're seeing there, number 2, flood extent in Shomkole, Kajiado. That's on the southern side of Kenya. That was us testing out the mapping use case. And then we also worked together with FAO and MasterCard Foundation to do mapping based on the desert locust invasion. I think that was from 2022. So what we did is to map out, I think we did 5 counties back then, just to measure the efficacy efforts that government was putting in place then. And then for COVID-19, we mapped out different hotspots just to inform the different teams on the ground in terms of how our recovery efforts can be done. We also worked to map out and document the construction of the ICRC regional offices here in Nairobi. We also worked with the Red Cross in Eswatini and the RCMRD team in Eswatini. So RCMRD is the research, it's a research center. Yeah, they do research and development. And yeah, we worked with them back then. We trained a team down in Eswatini. We helped them build some capacity internally, and we did some mapping for livelihoods. One of our biggest missions are refugee camps in Turkana. We mapped out the refugee camps. I have a separate slide for that I'd like to get into a bit later. We've also been doing crop monitoring for different counties based off their needs, of course. So what you're seeing at the top is an output from some mapping we did in Garissa, a farm called Nasra Farm. So that was an RGB map that we did just to show what the farm looked post-flood. So you can see the different color to show the effects of the floods. So this is the data that we gave to the farmers through the county branch, just to help them plan a bit more on how they would recover from this. We've also worked with different programs just to understand flood simulations and the different triggers. So the drone team was part of the deployment once the triggers were triggered rather. And then, so for our floods response, well, this was one of our most, I think, better coordinated response efforts back in 2024. I do have a separate slide for that, just to show you guys what we got into at that time. Latestly tested is the mangrove restoration mapping that we're doing in Lamu, the coastal side of Kenya, along with our DRR team. There down are some of our search and rescue missions. And yeah, so what you're seeing in terms of the pictures is some of the documentation we did for floods last year. I think that was the worst flood that Kenya has seen in a very long time. And what you're seeing on your left is the outputs that we gave to the different stakeholders during the FAO mapping. So what you're seeing is the classifications of the different colors from the mapping, the multispectral mapping. So you can see some cropland, some forest land, bare soil. So this was just to help them understand how efficient their interventions were. Secondly, I'd like to go into our last mile delivery efforts, rather our testing. So this is I think, our most highly tested use case at the moment. We've worked with a couple of partners, as you can see. So first and foremost, we worked with Nama Drones. They are a Korean-based drone manufacturer. That's the picture you're seeing in the middle with the white drone. So they have a VTOL drone, and it carries about 5 kg payload. And oh yeah, great, you can see my mouse. So that's the Nama drone's VTOL drone. It carries about 5 kgs. The idea of testing this was to see if they can carry like small packages, so a lot around antivenom, vaccines, and blood. The drone could be airborne for about 40 minutes. So we're testing this along with the Ministry of Health, along with county governments. We tested with 3 different counties. So this was a big learning for not only the drone manufacturers, but us as well, because what they had is a drone that we had to sort of assemble here locally based off the parts that they would send. So this was a bit difficult for us because we're not really engineers in that way. So I think it was a learning for them that maybe bringing technology from outside into local countries would be a bit hard, there would be a lot of interventions around localization and all that. So yeah, that was done back in 2023. What you're seeing on the sidelines and here at the bottom was us working with Wings for Aid. So it's a project that was funded by the Dutch government, testing out a mini fighter drone here in Kenya. I think they were here for about a year and a half. And this was actually it was a fantastic project, actually. They have a really good workflow and a very powerful drone. It doesn't look much like a drone because it's a mini fighter, it's quite big, but there's a lot of learnings around this as well. So our role here as Kenya Red Cross was to do the drop zone management. That's what we're calling it. So that basically means we were in charge of loading and offloading and just doing a lot of the checks around the SOPs and for the packaging, and to make sure that we did our role in helping them test out what fits in the box, what can survive a drop. I have a video for this at the end just to show you what that looked like, but this was a fantastic challenge for us. Yeah, so for what you're seeing, the box on the right, one of our colleagues, they're loading it. So that's one of the boxes, and the aircraft could carry, I think, 8 at a time, a total payload of, I think, maximum 1,000 kgs. Quite a powerful drone because it could go like 250 kilometers out and back. Yeah, so the idea around this was to prepackage dry foods, essential medical supplies, dignity kits, so things we would need to deliver during last mile delivery. So yeah, some of our milestones here. So I have broken this down into 3 parts. So one, I'll talk about our support to partners and the ecosystem, our role we've played as Kenya Red Cross and the drone team. So we worked with different partners on co-creation workshops, right? So what we did here is that our regulations did come out in 2021, but there's been a lot of back and forth between different partners on the ground, stakeholders, and governments as well, because they weren't very inclusive. So through different stakeholder meetings and stakeholder workshops, we tried to break down the regulations. We worked with different teams to help the normal drone operators understand this better, because it was quite a very technical document for drone users. Didn't really work. So we were working in the background with co-creation workshops, along with Kenya Flying Labs and We Robotics, just to help decipher this further for for drone operators in the ecosystem. A lot of advocacy. We've been part of a lot of panels and facilitation, just to really show the efforts on the ground in terms of how far we've worked with drones, some of our challenges, what are the best practices in the industry, how we can use partnership as a tool in our work. As we know, drones can be costly, a bit expensive to do some research and development. So yeah. And then what you're seeing there, Kwasa, Kenyan Crude Air Systems. Kenya Red Cross sits in this board. It's a national platform where we basically bring all drone operators in the country together as a bridge to not only the authority, KCAA, but also just to see what potential partnerships and opportunities we have in the industry. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, the floods 2024 response. This was the March, April, May floods. I think this was one of our best highly coordinated responses just yet, not only because we had a very lean team, because we used our partners to help us get the different resources we need. So not only through Kwasa. So Kwasa is the board I mentioned earlier, where a lot of the partners sit. So we leverage on this platform to reach out to potential drone pilots who have drone equipment, who are field ready, who would be willing to work with us during the floods response. And it was amazing the kind of response we got. I think I was working with a roster of about 20 pilots who are field ready, who have this equipment in hand, and they're all willing to volunteer and help us in the field. So that was a good learning for us. We saw how powerful partnerships can be. So through this coordinated approach, we aided the rescue of a 5-year-old boy who had been marooned by floods for 3 days. This was in Machakos County. So that's a screenshot you're seeing at the bottom, right? That's part of the footage, the rescue footage from the scene that day. Yeah, and I believe for that mission, like the ground support is about 3 kilometers away. So the drone pilot, who was not even one of us, by the way, it was from our partners, Kenya Flying Labs, was able to sort of forge a path for the KDF, for the responders on the ground to follow to reach the boy. So that was a major win for us. I think we even had this on the news. Also, we were able to supplement satellite imagery by conducting rapid assessments of disaster-affected areas. I have a picture for that. In the next slide, you'll see what exactly that looked like, because we were in areas where we had villages literally submerged by water, and then we would map these areas and then give this now to the programs team to share with other stakeholders, and we had a sort of a coordinated approach for the recovery. Also, the Maimahiu flash floods and mudslide incidents in Nakuru County. So what we did here is that we conducted a corridor mapping. It was along a 15-kilometer stretch, a downstream stretch, where the debris was, and we did mapping for that, and we were able to give this, of course, the analyzed map to the stakeholders on the ground to be able to have a more coordinated approach during the response. We also did we did a lot of hazard monitoring during that time of sinkholes or similar water bodies that were forming during the floods, as these were sorry, I'll show you that. Yeah, as these were a major problem at that point. Yeah, and through one of the mapping we did during the hazard monitoring, we were able to evacuate a school that was downstream a hospital. So we were able to save lives. So this is a big use case that we're planning to look into more this year, as we plan to do a lot of predictive analysis for different disasters. Also, just to tap in a bit more in terms of our partnerships, through Amazon Web Services, AWS, they linked us with Help NGO, who for now are a big partner to us, because they came through for us. They sent us a number of, I think, 6 pilots and drones for us to use during for some flood risk mapping during the flood. So this was a big help for us. Also, this was more of a peer learning activity, rather mission for us. There's a lot that we learn from each other in the field, especially in how better to use our resources for a lean team. Also, we recently received funding from Meta to rebuild our capacities, and that's how we have a new, bigger team. So yeah, these are some of the outputs that I was talking about earlier, right? So what you're seeing on the right is the corridor mapping. So this is drone data overlapped with satellite data of the hazard mapping I talked about. So this is the output we gave to the stakeholders, right? So as you can see, it shows the path, the river buffer in terms of 50 meters and 100 meters, the number of buildings and households at risk. So this was just to, for us to show the kind of impact if the tragedy did happen. And yeah, this is actually the map that they used as this is the information, or the evidence they used to evacuate the hospital and the hospital. Sorry, the hospital and the school that I talked about earlier. And then on your right, like I mentioned, this is Bandi village in Tana River, which is on the coastal side of Kenya. So as you can see, this village is literally submerged by water, right? What you're seeing is rooftops. You can barely see any houses. So we did, I think, over 15 maps, similar maps to share with the multi-agencies that were working on the ground, of course, through our disaster management team. So what you're seeing, we were able to calculate the number of households affected, schools, clinics within that area, just so that we have a more calculated approach during our response and recovery efforts. Another big milestone, like I mentioned earlier, mapping the refugee camps in Turkana. I think this was one of our biggest missions yet. We worked with OpenStreetMap and UNHCR. The idea was to map out the refugee camps in Turkana, which is, I think it was around 80 kilometers square, where we mapped out Kakuma villages 1 to 3, the town itself, and Kalube villages 1 to 6. This was quite, it was a task. Let me put it like that. It was a task because persons of concern are a very sensitive thing in our work. It was quite a headache to get approvals with the different local authorities. This was a big learning for us in how to coordinate stakeholders on the ground, especially with sensitive groups like refugees. So yeah, I think I've never worked so hard during a drone mission. But yeah, it was successful. We managed to collect over 3 TB of data. I think you can actually get the process analyzed data on OSM and I can share these links later if anyone is interested. But yeah, our role was to collect the raw data. Our role was to collect the raw data with OpenStreetMap. There you go. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a new, bigger team. We have a team of 10 pilots now, 6 in-house drones, and 8 successfully tested use cases. So these range from a lot of mapping, documentation, search and rescue, emergency ops mapping, last mile delivery. So we are testing the use case right now, though, as you'll see in the upcoming slides, we are trying to land a project for this just to see how successful it would be in our context. So yeah, looking forward, this team you're seeing here not only has pilots that we've trained here at the headquarters, but this time we changed our approach. We reached into the regions. So some of the people you're seeing here are disaster management officers from different counties. So how we did it is that we prioritized what we consider red zones for floods or drought or different disasters, and those were our priority, considering we have 7 regions and limited resources, right? So the second step towards that now is prepositioning drone resources within the different red zones in the country, right? So one step at a time, of course, being very aware that a lot of this has been funded internally, and the funding we got before was just to train a team of 10, right? So now how do we go into making sure that we pre-position these resources so that in the event of a disaster, we're no longer deploying from HQ, we have the expertise, we have the equipment already in the different counties or regions, right? Also, we plan to go beyond Africa in terms of our drone operations. We do have a team that have international and local licenses, so we have variety in terms of how far we can go right? Of course, working with partners and national societies to build capacities, we are trying to get into predictive analysis with the data that we get, as this is proving very valuable in our line of work. Like I mentioned before, last mile delivery, we really are looking to see what kind of drone would work in our context. Something that can carry a payload that makes sense in terms of in terms of an emergency. So a drone that can really go the last mile and doesn't require us to be a kilometer away. Something that is affordable, something that makes sense for our type of operations. Here we go in terms of our value proposition and potential collaborations. So we have over 5 years experience in terms of the team that we're dealing with now, and the new team, a lot of them have been involved along the way in terms of rebuilding capacities. Of course, we are looking to test out different new use cases in terms of humanitarian and commercial operations. Of course, we have our own equipment in-house, and we have very strong SOPs. We have mentored different partners to come up with different SOPs for different needs. As we know, missions are very drone specific, and that's how SOPs come along as well. We do have grassroots network and support from local authorities, which is a big win and a big plus in terms of how seamlessly we can then implement projects. We have a group of internationally licensed pilots. So that means that we can operate beyond Kenya and Africa. Potential areas of collaboration and services, of course, humanitarian-based operations. Some of the use cases here then would look like surveillance, small-scale and large-scale mapping, search and rescue, documentation, and crop monitoring. We also are able to offer services in terms of commercial-based operations. So whether it's industrial, construction, precision agriculture, we do now have the expertise in-house. We have a team that's under training to be TOTs, so we'll be able to soon offer this as a service where we're able to build capacities in terms of training drone pilots. We're able to guide partners in terms of how to come up with a drone team, what are the considerations, potential challenges and risks, and also formation of SOPs. So yeah, that's it from my end. I have some links here that I think I'll put in the chat box in terms of some of the articles we've done and publications. Yeah, so maybe you can visit our website, check out more of our work. But that's it from my end, guys. Back to you. Back to you, Dan.
Thanks, Sapira. That was really great. And it's amazing to see everything that's been going on. Definitely a big, virtual round of applause from the people in the room. I saw a couple of people doing the applause emoji. Are there any questions from the group? Joel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Swabira. That was a very powerful presentation, and there is a lot of learning from it. My question is on maybe the very last part where you talked about training TOTs. And it is around either only training or walking the journey to certification. So I would like to know maybe how long it will take, because we are also trying to build capacity here in Uganda, and visited some of the Kenyan team. Some of the people I see in the photos are part of the other forum where we discuss data and digital initiatives. But I would like to know if, for example, you are to offer support to Uganda Red Cross Society, how long maybe would it take, but also the training? Is it training and certification, or just training and then the person will walk the mile to get the certification? Or secondly, I have my colleague Paul. He's in the call, he's listening, but I'll ask the question either way. And the question is around which kind of certification are you talking about? Because you said that you already have now capacity to also do commercial drone piloting. So are you talking about the humanitarian one or the commercial one plus humanitarian? Just the clarity on that. Thank you. Over to it.
Thanks, Joel, for your questions. So in terms of how long it would take to train and certify a team, so the thing about drone operations, they're quite sensitive and the context varies in terms of the different countries and their CAAs, their civil authorities, right? So for instance, how long it would take here in Kenya is not necessarily how long it would take in Uganda, right? But if we're talking about a typical training and certification, it might take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how many units you need to do according to your CAA. So there's CAA in different countries, and they're the ones who basically create the benchmarks. And if there's no CAA, then I think they look to a more sort of international benchmark or standard. So then whether it's ICAO or whether it's a South African benchmark, because I know a lot of the regulations here in Africa use SA regulations as a benchmark, right? So to answer you, if it's training a team and certifying, it would take maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And then now the other issues are different. That's a whole other ball game, because if it's helping you walk the journey through creating a team, depending on your dynamics there, it varies, right? But 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, in terms of training and certification. And then number 2, what kind of licensing? So we do have what here we call remote pilot licenses, and that license can be used both for humanitarian operations and for commercial operations, right? And as Kenya Red Cross, we are heavy on conducting our mandate under humanitarian operations, but through ICHA, which is our research and knowledge hub, that's a limited company, we can conduct commercial operations under that as well. So that's a kind of certification. But before, in terms of our international licensing, which was the first licenses we got before, was through Transport Canada, which gives us sort of like an international spectrum to work with. Yeah. Does that sound good on your end? Great. Back to you, Dan.
Yeah, any other questions from the group? Francesco.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
I can. So
Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was great to see all the work you've been doing there. So I have a technical question about the drones, because I've seen you showed some pictures of these fixed wings drones that you used. Did you use the same kind of drones for mapping, or for mapping you used smaller things like DJI? And also on the mapping as well, I'm just curious to know what kind of software did you use for the to stitch together the orthomosaic image, if you know that.
Sure. So in terms of the different drones we use, it really depends on the mission, on the scope of the mission. We can do small scale mapping with the smaller DJIs. So this, let me just show you the difference. Do I have this? Okay. So the what I showed you earlier in the presentation, we did with a smaller scale drone. Sorry. This one. Bandi village. This we used the DJI to map, right? So that was a smaller village. It didn't make sense to take out the Wingcha. So for larger scale missions, we use the Wingcha mapping drone, which is a VTOL as well. It's high precision, so you get really good quality data in a very short time. Though it's a bigger fixed wing drone, it's a hybrid, so it's a hybrid, so rotors and wings. And so what you're seeing on the left, we used the Wingcha to map. So it was much bigger. It was a 15-kilometer stretch. Made sense to use the Wingcha. Yeah. So we alternate between DJI, of course, and Wingcha, depending with the kind of mission at hand. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And about the soft. Sorry, these two
Oh,
images
for the
you show. Yeah, sorry, and
Yeah.
these two images you're showing, are they both being mapped with a drone or just the one on the right?
The one on the right is we used a drone. The one on the left is overlaid drone mapping and satellite mapping to show so that we could be able to give the statistics, the stats to the people on the ground, right? Yeah. So let me see if I just 1 second. Let me see if I can get if I have on my deck what the Winter one can do. But other than that, to answer your second question, in terms of the different softwares we use, so we do use Pix4D. It works really well for us, especially when you're using big, larger chunks of data. We have also tested Drone Deploy. So for us, it's in what makes sense to us in terms of cost, right? So what makes sense in terms of uploading all the data to a workflow that is cost friendly for us, that doesn't need too much heavy machinery, like to be able to process this data. But we have our data expert on the call. I don't know if I can just ask him maybe to speak more about this. Ponia, would you like to talk about how we process it?
Yeah, thank you very much. For processing of the drone imagery, I think we moved recently from Pix4D, and now we are currently using WebODM, which is a free and open source software, which we installed. You can install either on a gaming machine or a laptop, or you can deploy it on AWS EC2 instance. Yeah, over to you.
Thanks for now. Back to you, Dan.
Great questions. Anyone else? Ben, go ahead.
Thank you very much for this really interesting presentation. I'm just a little bit wondering how you organize this when you pre-position the drones in your branches or in the affected areas. Do you like train people from the branches and also the branches operate them independently, or is it always like supported by the national headquarters and by your team? Thank you very much.
Should I answer and then we go to Paul, or do we just take all questions and I answer at once? Maybe Paul, you can ask.
Thank you. Thank you for the good presentation. Mine is on the board that you mentioned about KUASA, Kenya Improved Air Systems Board. Could you throw a little more light on how it operates and the membership and the kind of terms of reference? Is it just a think tank, a group, or it is an officially recognized board by the government? Or thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So I'll start with the first question on how we plan to pre-position resources, like have we trained a team? So we just recently trained a new team of pilots, 10 pilots, and among that team, we prioritized in terms of our regions and what we consider red zones. So West Kenya, Northern Kenya, coastal side of Kenya. So we brought on board our DMOs, our regional disaster management officers, who are basically the focal points and in charge of disaster-centered projects or just disasters within those regions. So they were part of the training. So yes, we have now cascaded down our expertise into the regions, right? So in these areas, we do now have the capacity in terms of a licensed drone pilot. The next step for us now is to actually get the funding to put now drone equipment in place, right? So whether we have DJI Mavics stationed in West Kenya and coast or whether we have them not within counties, but within regions, because we operate within 7 regions, which then have a number of counties under them. So then that's now our next step, is to see how to do that in the most efficient, of course, and cost-effective way. So yes, we have trained pilots within the red zones, and they were part of the recent training. Second question, in how KUASA operates, yes, it is an official certified organization. The people who sit on the board are basically what we call OGs and stakeholders who've been around. So you're looking at companies like us, of course, Kenya Red Cross. You're looking at companies like Kendron, if you've heard about them, Fahari Aviation. So these are basically what we would consider big time players, or people who've been in the industry long enough to have the different kind of expertise. So those are the people who sit on the board, and we also work very closely with our CAA in terms of whether it's comms, whether it's regulations. We recently decentralized our ARPAS operations, and now we've been grouped with MAND, with the MAND sector, which is a beautiful nightmare, I would like to call it. So yeah, there's challenges that come with that, and that's the role of KUASA, is to bridge the gap between the drone operators and the CAA. So yes, it is certified, and that's exactly who sits on the board. All right, Paul, great. Back to you, Dan.
Okay, great. Thanks for those questions. Are there any more? Joel, I see you have another one.
Yes, just one quick one. The last one is about your interaction as ICHA with the Emergency Operations Center. I had a chance of visiting your Emergency Operations Center, and I was told you have the different centers, about 12 of them, like the more local ones. I would like to know, is this arrangement of capacity building where you trained more people, especially in the regions, is it how is it aligning with the one of the EOC? Do you work closely together, or you are separate arm, and where do you interact? Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. So yes, we do work together. We are separate entities in how ICHA is the background and the management of ICHA and the EOCs. The EOCs sit under the disaster management unit, right? And that's under mainstream Kenya Red Cross. But yes, we do work together. I believe the RDMOs we trained do oversee the different EOCs in the different regions. So we do have a very good working relationship with Kenya Red Cross, different programmatic areas, including disaster management. And actually, big shout out to my team who are here, the rest of the drone team. We do have some staff here who work directly with the EOCs. So yes, we work directly together, though different management, but yeah, they are the ones who, like the EOC through disaster DM, sit in the different working groups and in the different stakeholder sessions that make the big decisions and bring the work to us, right? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And there's a question in the chat. Thanks for the opportunity. It was a very interesting webinar. Greetings to all. At this moment, I do not have the opportunity to speak apart from DJI. Which drone manufacturers do you use? Who are the manufacturers of drones used over long distances?
Oh, okay. That's from Stefano. So we have tested a different number of drones, but to be honest, the drone that works best in terms of the areas that we operate in, and also just a drone that's friendlier to use, that doesn't have a very complicated interface, and that would be DJI. We work a lot with DJI Mavics, Enterprise. In terms of long distance, in terms of bigger mapping missions, we use the Wingtra. The reason why we went in that direction is because we operate in very sensitive areas in terms of we do fly above communities. So you need a drone that can almost give us 80%, 90%, dare I say, safety. Safety is a big thing for us, and that's a fully automated drone. A lot of work goes into the planning and the stakeholder community engagement, but we just needed a drone that would get the job done in the safest, most efficient way. So yes, it is a high-end drone, but it's what worked for our operations. Yeah, especially considering do no harm policy. Yeah, so Wingcha, DJIs, those are the toys we play with. Yeah. Dan, I don't know if you let me, but I had a video I wanted to show the team before we wrap up of our operation that we had in Bissell, the drop zone management. It's just like a 1-minute video. It's okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. And if it has sound, make sure that you tick the box for
Yeah.
include sound when you share screen.
Okay, sure. Let me do that. Are you guys able to hear okay before I let the whole video play?
I don't see anything shared yet.
Oh, let me share again.
Okay, drop zone management, see that?
Can see that?
Not sure about sound though.
The sound is quite low in the beginning, but tell me if you can hear it now.
Okay.
Oh,
there it is.
So two boxes with mescaline, two boxes with glucose bottles, then on top the mouse rest, and then one final box, one final flight. I want to do with beverages.
So, yep, that's it from my end. Back to you, Dan.
Great. Thanks so much, Swabira. Truly great presentation. As noted in the chat, the recording will be posted to the IFRC Drones Group YouTube channel a bit later on. So if anybody wants to share it onwards or review the presentation, please check it out there. And also all the recordings from past presentations are available there as well. Cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.